Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome back to the Liberal Artist Podcast. I am your host, Bodio Papula. With me, I have spliced directly into your DNA, Kaylie Horowitz.
Hello.
And the circus of value himself, Andy Gibby Gibson. What is up, my friendos? That's not a response.
Oh, damn. Well, I tried.
Simultaneously, it's a lot and nothing at all. Nothing at all. I'm in a very weird and unfortunate period where I'm waiting to hear back results on a job that I've been interviewing for.
No! No!
You can't just shout Picard quotes without context.
No!
You're going to blow out people's
Or
eardrums.
can you?
Okay, but it's a very cool job, and they're very nice people, and I'm very interested in it. But I'm having to find ways to, busy myself.
One of those ways was Gibby and I spent a solid 2 or 3 hours screaming no at each other in Picard's voice. I think it was like a few nights ago.
I'm gonna have to edit in Picard, just to give the audience
I would
a
love it if
reference
you did.
for what you're saying.
This is what we mean by boys being boys.
Right,
Screaming in Picard voice for 2 hours.
Okay, audience, here you go. Here's the clip. In
Hell
3,
yeah.
2, 1.
No! No!
There it is. That was the
Wow.
clip. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that was it. Somehow, Bo, Jacob, and I were able just to
Shout out to Jacob.
shout out to Jacob,
Shout out.
who might or might not actually watch the show.
We love our friends. If you aren't listening to our podcast, how dare you?
We spent a good 2 or 3 hours doing that joke over and over again and rapping in the voice of Hank Hill,
I forgot.
which really was impressive because we hit a solid 20 songs in the voice of Arlen's favorite son.
Why haven't you put out an album yet? Jeez.
We ran out of classic hip hop songs. Like, we were quoting so many.
Oh my God.
We really went down the rabbit hole. It was pretty impressive, and I think I really appreciate the moments where you can just be stupid with the lads, you know?
I do, however, have to call out oh my God, somebody made a YouTube channel called Hank Trill. There's the video that that inspired it, correction, Hank Trills with an S.
Proofreading's very important for us.
Was a song called Propane Money or Propane Pays the Bills.
Yeah.
And I have beef with this person.
Oh, why is that?
Because on their little album art they did, it's Hank Hill with a gat in a tub of what I can only assume is lean. But they have a state on the, I hesitate to say album art. They have a state on the album art.
On the Microsoft Paint file.
Heavy quotations, album
Yes.
art.
And it's Michigan.
Aw.
Mr. Hank Trills, how fucking dare you steal Hank Hill from the glorious state of Texas? That's Arlington, Texas. That's in the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area. That's a great city.
That's all that Texas has left that's still fully sacred at this point, and
Yeah.
you're taking that away. Look, my family's from Michigan. We have enough. We have enough going
enough?
for us. Like our state's been pretty good recently. We don't need to take that from somebody else.
I hesitate to ask, but what does Michigan have going for it?
All right, New York. You want to chat shit, New York? All right, let's go, Buffalo.
I'm technically Florida more than anything. I already know I
then
lose.
you have even less. You have even less to
I
speak
know
of.
I lose either
America's
way. I just want to know
armpit.
what the hell Michigan even does.
Michigan has all of the Great Lakes. We've got
We touch one of
several
them
good
up here.
amusement parks. Oh, you got one. We've got 5, nerd. We are the Motor City. We have the Motor City with us.
Uh-huh.
Like, we are incredibly important for our country's civil rights movement.
That's
Oh,
true.
We have
fucking ribs.
the #1 foodie town in America. So suck
not-
it, New
that's-
York. You
that's-
couldn't even get that done right.
That's not actually true anymore.
No, because New York doesn't even agree on pizza, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, we're united behind awesomeness, and you're all just like, oh, Ray's on 11th. That's the real one.
That-
hey,
that's the
you're on
city.
Ray's on 16th. I'll
Yeah.
fucking kill you.
She lives in
That's-
Buffalo, which is very
I mean,
far
Buffalo
from
is
there.
also the dark, shadowy place, but like
Oh.
the pizza
Yeah.
debate just exists across the state.
Yeah, let's calm down when you're living in the Wisconsin of New York.
Damn.
Yeah,
Whoa.
you live in the
Whoa,
Wisconsin
hey,
of New
yo.
York. I like Buffalo, but like, let's be real
What's
here.
happening?
But you know, as someone that lives in Buffalo, I can say at least I don't live in Rochester.
Hey, get dunked on
Well,
Rochester.
congratulations on clearing the lowest
And
bar.
or Syracuse. Those have been sort of the two prime target areas of, oh God, you live there. Buffalo's still part of that, but it's a little better.
Congrats, you beat the city that has an orange as a mascot for their college. I'm really impressed by
This
that.
man is really trying to carry the entire state of Michigan on his back right now. Like, why are you so insulted by what she said?
That's a
Talk
lot
to the
of-
hand. That's what I say.
What do you mean?
The literal shape of the hand, which is the shape of my state.
You're not even a whole state. You're two states. You're a state and a landmass.
Yeah.
They couldn't contain our awesomeness.
That's
in
not
just,
true.
Like, one
They had to
landmass.
cut it off at the source for fear that it would become too powerful if they were united.
Too many militias.
We had to have at least some land defense against Wisconsin, you know? Like, we've got the lakes locked down, but with the UP touching Wisconsin, we just had to be sure that they weren't going to come and steal our cool
I
stuff.
hate that you just said the UP.
Yeah,
The UP.
the Upper Peninsula, baby.
I know what it stood for.
I could go on for, like, literal hours,
I know you can.
and I won't.
Please don't.
This is going to turn into a whole different, like, the Michigan Manifesto of
The
just, like, you
Michigan
can't
Manifesto.
stop. No, I don't need to. By the way, this conversation was about Hank Hill
Hank
a
Trills.
few minutes ago. Hank Trill. Yeah, Texas
Trills
needs...
with an S.
Yeah, Hank Trills. Texas needs Hank Trills and Hank Hill more than we do right now. Like, we don't... We're okay right now. We're fine.
Mhm.
We're pretty good overall.
I will say, now that Buc-ee's has turned into a more of a like southeast like chain, like
wild.
not that like it has escaped Texas. It has reached other places that there's not much else going solely for Texas outside of that one region of the entire state.
I'll make this quick, but it's really damn weird that my town, Auburn, is getting a Buc-ee's.
It's super weird.
I'm so excited for the Buc-ee's
Why are you excited for a gas station?
because it's the Beaver God, Bo.
Not a gas station.
It is an experience.
No, it is a place to fuel my car and kill the environment.
And the bathrooms are so clean.
That to be determined.
The bathrooms are incredibly clean in
To
every
be
Buc-ee's
determined.
I've been to. I've been to
Yes.
at least 4.
That is not something you should brag about.
I don't care. Like, I respect any gas station that can also give me an incredibly good brisket sandwich while I'm
Don't
in there.
eat brisket from a gas station.
Too late!
Gas station superiority belongs to Buc-ee's and Wawa, hands down.
Yep.
That was cool.
Sometimes I just don't have anything to add.
All hail the beaver.
No, cut that, please. I hated that so much.
God.
Oh,
Incredible.
fuck. Where's my
save us,
mind?
Bo.
Where is my mind?
Where's my
I don't know,
mind?
Pixies.
It's either under the water or up in the sky. It's Bioshock time, y'all.
Bioshock
Yay.
time.
We have effectively speed ran 2 different games, which I don't recommend. We want to talk about if you're unaware of the video game series Bioshock. There are 3 games, but only 2 of them matter. And
Oof.
we were talking about, like the similarities in like theming and environment and all that kind of stuff with these two games, storytelling and such. And we wanted to do our thing and think about it way too hard, right?
Let's dredge up something that's already a bit like past relevancy and talk about it again for an hour.
Whoa. I will say it might be a little bit relevant soon because apparently they are officially, finally putting down the production for the Bioshock TV show / movie.
Yeah.
We're not 100% certain, but at least it's in the news cycle
I feel
again.
like it's in the news cycle every year, though.
Maybe this time.
And I also, we'll get into this, I also don't think that's a TV show or a movie people would want. But yeah, let's talk about the oldie first, right? Let's talk about Bioshock. Bioshock is a first-person horror game that came out in 2008?
7, I think.
Question mark?
Was it? Oh, God. Was it really that long ago?
2007.
The reason I know that is because, like, 2007 is considered, like, a minor golden age with video games, with a lot of the big titles that were coming out at the time. So people get all in a nostalgic tizzy about, like, 2007, an incredible year, a fine year.
I'm looking at a list. It was fine.
I will say, like 2008 and 9, I remember when I started going to cons, that being like a really like peak time of like exciting video game cosplay, like just because of everything that was coming out. And I think one of my first experiences, because I did not play Bioshock until recently, like the original or Infinite. But I remember seeing like Big Daddy Little Sister cosplayers and being like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
I hate it, but I'm so enthralled. What?
I think some of the really impressive things about Bioshock is that even if you have not played it or are not that familiar with the story, you recognize some of the iconography of it.
So
and you recognize some of the art. It really is distinct in a way that still has remained fairly unique, 15 plus years later or so.
Art Deco, but underwater.
Right,
Yes,
yeah.
And I think it's just such a cool idea for an environment and a story. Like if you're not familiar with it, essentially this is a game that asks, what would happen if Atlas Shrugged continued a couple more pages?
Only a couple more?
A few more. I'm just saying it would only take a few more pages for all of that to go downhill pretty quickly. It's all about a man named Andrew Ryan, which is probably not the world's most subtle nod to Ayn Rand.
Yeah, fuck this game, dude.
Yeah, an incredibly individualist, objectivist, libertarian guy who came into all of his money after coming to the United States in the 30s and 40s through oil refineries, saying, well, government regulations really sucks an egg. I'm going to the one place where they can't stop me.
I'm going
the
to
sea.
the one place uncorrupted by capitalism. Underwater.
the exact opposite. The one place I can corrupt completely
the
by
one place I can corrupt it. Under the ocean.
The setting takes place in Rapture, an undersea city that Andrew Ryan funds and invites the world's most prominent scholars, scientists, doctors to, with the promise that you can create any innovation that you please with no fear of government regulation, censorship, or ethics. As soon as the game begins, it shows his face in gold sculpture with the words, "No gods, no kings, only man." And it's just like, buddy, your head is made out of gold right in the front here. I think you accidentally goofed that up a little bit. But the whole thing is about his conflict with another capitalist individual type, Frank Fontaine, who figures out through science fiction stuff how to genetically improve people. That then turns out to make them all go crazy, and it turns into a civil war between them. And you are in the perspective of somebody discovering the aftermath of this.
No face
and
Magoo.
Yeah, Jack.
No face Jack.
What a guy.
Magoo.
Jack, my boy.
Would you kindly shut the fuck up?
Would you kindly shut the fuck up?
You're trying to survive in a destroyed underwater Art Deco nightmare with people who have had their genetic codes completely rearranged by consumer available plasmids, which are just like, shoot lightning.
Yeah.
Do this.
Can I talk about that? I want to talk about this immediately. I don't want to talk about gameplay at all because these are a 15-year-old and 10-year-old game. So the games still play fairly well, but they are dated. There, we said
it. That's the thing about the golden age of anything. Eventually, it gets a bit clunky.
Right. Story, concept, great. Mechanics.
I also, let me go ahead and say this at the front end. I also adore both of these games. I think they're both great, and I think they're both worth experiencing if you have patience. If you have patience for older games, the aesthetics, right? Because I think. That's where my standing point is going to be. The game is at its strongest aesthetically, right? It's so fascinating in a time when horror games weren't super common. Like the only other series I was really like big at this point was Resident Evil, and by this time Resident Evil had already become action movies. Leon Kennedy drop kicking as giant zombie men.
And a single Doom game.
And one Doom game. But it in a time where scary games weren't very common, this game doesn't do anything like mind bending, right? Its fear manipulation is very simple, right? It's dark corners, it's people talking outside of your purview, it's jump scares. But it's simple, but it's all executed so very well. That I think that's what gives the game its like strongest piece.
I will say it's mind bending in its horror without trying to gore fest you, without trying because that's the thing. When you stop and think about what you're witnessing, like, yes, it's the video game and there's always that kind of artifice as you're playing through it that like, yeah, it's just a game. But you stop and think about the gravity of the situation as if this were a tangible, possible reality on this planet. There are unspeakable horrors that not only you witness, but also just having to backtrack to understand how a person could have gotten into becoming this monster.
Right, because you're effectively trapped in a big submarine.
Yeah.
And you're thousands of leagues underwater. There is no escaping, and there's all these asylum patients with superpowers ready to get that ass, you know? Which is sincerely kind of terrifying.
Right.
Yeah. Not only like are they scary, but these are like rich people that have lost their minds and still think that they're better than you, and they're just like, put your tie back on as they're trying to rip your throat out.
There's some semblance of you can watching interviews with like horror authors and video game creators and whatnot. They're always very succinct in saying something with intelligence is always much scarier than just a monster. And whatever the splicers are, they still have at least the facsimilies of intelligence, which is very cool and very scary. where my issue comes from
Uh-oh.
is canonically, right? And we can jump into talking about the quote unquote story.
Mhm.
But it canonically, yeah, give me that look, motherfucker. We'll get into it. Canonically, Rapture was built in the 40s,
Mhm.
and the game takes place in 1960.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why does
Something like
everything look like it's from the 20s?
Because the 40s were romanticizing the 20s. As we were coming out of a post-World War II, like we were looking towards a brighter future. So there's part of this like 50s chrome and like futurist like idea there. But especially for somebody like Andrew Ryan, who's probably trying to drum up on these weren't things so much better when wink wink nudge nudge mentality. What's the last great period that we just had? The 20s, because we were all sad and depressed in the 30s.
Thank you, Kaylie, for doing the heavy lifting for 2K games. My assumption is they still wanted the game to be in the past, but also wanted to justify the level of technology they had without being like, they're super fast. I like your explanation better.
No, and like from a sort of like art and theory and timeline and critical analysis, that's sort of what I jump to of like, yeah, if I were trying to convince a bunch of people to come live under the fucking water with me and pretend that everything's gonna be fine, I would be harping on any kind of like combinant, like great American restoration combined with the new technology, the new discoveries of the future of tomorrow, which is why we kind of get some of these like, I think it's more in the costuming of the character models in some instances where some of the garb starts to look more like 50s, like late 40s, early 50s
which
kind of suits.
I also had issue with.
but the architecture itself is exactly that, like the Art Deco metropolitan, living large, roaring 20s time that we all would love to go back to, because weren't things so great until the government messed it up? Because of course they did. It wasn't that we were dragged into a war and it also committed war crimes. No. Things just got worse somehow because the government got involved in things, and we should go somewhere where there's no government.
Right. Forget about prohibition.
Yeah, they prohibitioned us. Fuck that.
You know who's especially the problem? That commie FDR trying to institute social safety nets.
Crazy.
That guy.
Jeez,
I read up on some of the lore, and part of the reason that Andrew Ryan did all this was he was really pissed off about FDR, where he's just like, why should I have to pay for poor people? That makes no sense.
Have you ever been so mad at someone you went, fuck you, I'm gonna go build a house underwater and you can't come get me?
So part of the environment is in the aesthetic, which all horror games do because it's a good set piece. Most horror games do notes, right? Like you find the scrawlings.
Slender notes.
Like, Slender Man does it. Resident Evil. If you've never read the Itchy Tasty note from Resident Evil, it's beautiful horror writing in like 3 paragraphs. It's amazing. But
eat your heart out, Junji Ito.
Hey, you leave my mans alone.
But Bioshock chooses to do it through voice recordings through these things called voxophones. And the only one that really affected me, and I don't know why, was one by Ryan himself, where he talks about how he bought a forest and he was so mad at people for telling him he should build a public park in that forest that he burnt it to the ground.
Yeah.
Just to say, fuck them, it's my forest. I was like, damn. It's like that.
Can we all celebrate God's creation? No!
Like,
No!
again,
No!
insane rich people logic. Because people like that, like, maybe or maybe not to that extreme, do exist in the world. Like, I I get in these like doom scrolling threads on Twitter and TikTok where it's like, have you ever interacted with somebody so rich and so out of touch with reality? And people have all of these accounts and all of these stories of just little day-to-day things with people that it's like, when is the last time you have talked with someone outside of your tax bracket, ma'am? That
it's one banana, Michael. What could it cost?
Right,
$10?
right. Like, it's exactly that kind of shit. Like, some people are like, oh yeah, it's just cheaper for me to, like, it's easy enough for me to just pay the like $150 parking ticket every day by just parking here and then walking right into the building for my classes. Like,
Okay.
and it's insane that people like that exist. And then you play this game and you realize, like, this is, I mean, clearly there's a lot of biting, good, juicy commentary and satire on libertarian logic and Ayn Rand's philosophy specifically. But then you realize, like, some of these scripts are not so far off from potential real people still running around today.
I'm gonna push back on that shit though. Fuck this game. I was playing for like 20 minutes and then I was like, oh, Andrew Ryan, Ayn Rand, got it. And then like 2 or 3 hours passed. I was like, oh wait, the guy's called Atlas because Atlas shrugged. Fuck this game. And then you get to the last boss and I'm like, wait, why is he a giant bronze man with no dick?
It's Atlas.
And then I look up and I see the sphere above him and it's fucking Atlas. I'm like,
yeah.
fuck this game again. How dare you?
It's not a generous segue, but I'll take it. I do want to like briefly talk about some of the politics of this game because I played it for the first time when I was a freshman in college. And,
oh boy.
My focus on it then was, oh my god, the big daddies are. Why don't they die?
Oh my god, no!
I only have four bullets.
The transition over the course of playing this game from, oh god, I don't want to have to kill it. I'm gonna get my ass kicked. They're so scary. To, all right, you motherfucker, get over here. I've got a heat-seeking missile. Just stand still and let me shoot you.
So anyways, it's an interesting story where on one side of it is Andrew Ryan, like Mr. Libertarian, and there's Frank Fontaine, like the cutthroat, like no morals capitalist.
He's a con man. He's a con man,
like, but he also knows like how to play his cards right for his benefit and his benefit alone.
Like a con
like
man.
You have those two going at each other all the time, and they are completely willing to exploit anybody that they can to be able to get ahead. Like, a part of what makes the game so horrifying is that guys like Frank Fontaine will set up things that look good, like, let's say, an orphanage for all the lost little girls of Rapture, because Ryan's just like, well, maybe they should have lifted themselves by their bootstraps, perhaps. But all the while, it's because the little girls are the ultimate test subject for the production of plasmids and Adam, the magical hoo-ha the magical shenanigans stuff that makes all of the logic of the world come to fruition. That he's actively taking the most downtrodden people and exploiting them for his profit and power.
I want to push back on that, not because I think you're wrong, because I agree, but because it didn't land with me in that way.
Okay.
Maybe because I'm playing this game as a 30-year-old man, and it's done well, or well enough, I should say. But it's so cartoonishly villainous what these guys end up coming through.
2007.
I didn't relate this to like real people, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't. And again, being like Snidely Whiplash twiddling the mustache. Man, that's a dated reference. That reference is older than I am.
I still talk about Snidely Whiplash.
Right. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I personally have a hard time being like, this is so realistic. realistic. It's like,
When
sure,
your
maybe to an
audience is
extent it
gamers, you have to play it up a little bit.
Sure.
To the ridiculous.
But I mean, like, there's a very fun semiotic, symbolic idea of like he is the one bit that has been taking advantage of. Like, they're little girls. They don't know better because they're children. And they are so horribly taken advantage of that by the end of the game, to see them all tear this man apart, like to bring down this sort
Stab
of
him in the
peak
throat.
masculine male leader is just swarmed by all of these vengeful little girls is so visually and like symbolically satisfying to me. Like we got to that. I was more excited for that part than just actually finishing the boss fight, was seeing how he gets his comeuppance, and it's all the little sisters. Like, oh, this is delicious. Fuck yes.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I also, and since we're transitioning to talking about like the story and the characters, I don't think that, and this is why I was kind of saying, I don't think this will be the TV show / movie that people want, because if you've ever played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you've experienced this, where it feels like you're coming in on the 23rd hour of the day, right? And all of the interesting stuff in the day has already happened, and you're finding out about it either retroactively or you are the consequences, right? Of the action, because you're
picking
machine.
up the pieces of the broken.
Not
world and trying to
even. You're
figure out what
walking over
happened.
the broken glass
Yeah,
just to get to the
all
end,
gone.
right? Which is why if we talk about translating this into a movie, I feel like nobody wants 2 hours of a guy in a turtleneck shooting people who need medicine, listening to radios. And I don't think people want all the stuff that happened before, because they'd feel like, I disagree, because I feel like what happens a lot with these video game adaptations, when you try something that's not just the video game, unless it's done with extremely high quality in the event of something like Castlevania, which people did push back on in the immediate, and then we got our shit together. We're like, no, this is good. I don't think people are into that, because they're constantly in the state of trying to relive what they experienced the first time they experienced this thing. Which you can't. You already experienced it. Get over it.
Sorry.
They got pretty close with The Last of Us, because people fucking loved that.
I think most of the people talking about The Last of Us, the TV show, didn't play the game. But that said, people who played the game still enjoyed the TV show. I'm not gonna front
it's
like that's
that,
not
like,
quality.
It's not shot for shot, but they're hitting all the right beats of the game at the right time,
and that's my
in
point,
a way that's
right?
acceptable for television media.
The one episode that they didn't do something that was in the game, the episode with the couple, people were pissed for a plethora of wrong reasons, but they were angry, right? So I feel like that's
this
the
wasn't
only
in my game,
right, and I feel like that if you're going with Bioshock 1, that's the only you would have to go with the novelization, which nobody fucking cares about.
I will say, I think there's an interesting way, because what's exciting, and I think what gets at that idea of why Bioshock is so fantastic to play through, is that it's a horror game, but you're actively there investigating a mystery. It's not your intention necessarily, but as you keep digging, it's that, like, you can kind of piece together how things got to the way that, like, it's like, gee, I wonder what happened to the city. Like, that's not the mystery
again,
here.
I push back on that, because Jack, who is boring, and I could go off about how it's very funny every time people want to talk about a super utopia society, they always say the solution is exactly what the Nazis wanted, a tall blonde super soldier with a gun. That's very funny to me every time. But Jack's intention, for most of the game, you find out he doesn't have intentions. And his intention isn't to solve what happened in Rapture, it's to get the fuck out.
No, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's his goal. But you as player,
You as player
arguably-
can go in
Yeah,
and
that's,
say
and that's the
what
thing,
happened
because
here.
Jack is so vague for so much of this.
He's a faceless
like,
protagonist, right?
Yeah,
Faceless,
I
voiceless
spend so
protagonist.
much of my time going, yeah, I know I need to get out, but I also need to go look for these tapes.
Yeah,
I
but
want to
that's
know what the
but
fuck
that's
is
you
going
doing
on
the
here.
extra work. I don't think
No,
that's the
and-
video game. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
and that's why I think if you want, like, to your point, to kind of serve both sides, because it's not going to be, it could be cool for fans of the game to get a movie or a series talking about everything leading up to the fall of Rapture, like kind of treated a little Peaky Blinders style, like there's factions
Like the
that
Civil
play with
War.
one another, there's a civil war brewing in this already
But that already
strenuous
happened
relationship.
in the canon of the
Yeah.
game.
but like then again, it's that, like, how do you get people into that when you don't have the dystopian decimation that we get in the game?
Yeah.
So how do you fit between those two spaces? Do you play with time in some way where you get an episode, or like split an episode in half, like flash back and forth between something that Jack finds,
Yes.
and then we get context in different parts, and
Which
then
is
how
what
do
I
we,
think you would
like
have
we
to
weave
do.
the
Yeah.
timelines together, because eventually it does all connect,
Right.
but it exactly will not be the game verbatim in a movie
It
or
can
in a
be.
series,
Yeah.
because it is all about, I mean, not his goal, but you as a player, for you, it's arguably all about what happened here. There is so much environmental storytelling on top of all of the little finding the hidden clues, hidden pieces here and there, that weave the whole thing together of who betrays who's really trying to do
Yeah,
what.
and I think that's what makes this game worth playing and very cool. It's not the
Yes.
story, it's not the gameplay, it's just the environment. The
Yes.
environment, the environmental storytelling, the atmosphere it produces is so sweet. It's very, very fascinating. You know what I'm saying?
It's also one of those peak
Indeed.
games that does like some great, like, we have to put a dead body for you to loot in here. Quick, find, like, it's that you died in this position. This man is in a bathtub.
Mhm.
Like, I love, like, environmental skeletons, environmental corpses.
This man has a Big Daddy drill through him that has nailed him to a table.
what fucking happened in here.
Right, like there's that. There's the, like, you open like 10 lockers that are in a bathroom, like nothing, money, nothing, a body.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Gibby, Kaylie, and I have been popping off last sauce before we swapped to Infinite.
You know, I think that since listening to your points about, you know, adapting Bioshock to television, I think it's impossible to do a shot-for-shot thing based on what we know Jack is. It's not who Jack is it's what
he's
he
a
is.
genetic super soldier who's brainwashed.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
spoilers.
We're past
That's
it.
why we said would his trigger word is "would you kindly" trigger
Would you
word. That's not the
kindly
right save phrase.
obey.
But when you use the phrase, his trigger phrase is if you say "would you kindly" either before or after, apparently you give him a command. He has to do it.
Wow.
I also think it's just interesting from a game design perspective to have that be the twist of, like, you think that you've been in control this whole
Yeah.
time, but both narratively and mechanically have you.
Mhm.
Right.
Again,
Yeah.
me being a cynical old man, it felt like we can't end the game with you just killing Ryan. So
Yeah.
it felt like a narrative tool to A, keep the story going, and B, give us a way out. Right.
Yeah.
Not saying it wasn't set up right that way,
Yeah.
because they kept it consistent.
It's a stronger game in the front half, like, you know, getting to Ryan and everything, than the back half.
Do you want to
like,
spend 2 hours collecting clothes because we don't want the game to end yet? Kill me.
Fontaine is a bit, you know, mustache twirly, snidely whiplash, as you mentioned, but I think that lead up to Ryan is immaculate, and the fact that it's a villain in a video game that not only thinks to the end that he is above you and has an entire speech on how he's above you and
lot
has
of 'em.
figured out your secrets,
Mm-hmm.
but he goes out on his own terms. He's
Yeah.
just like, here's my golf club. Kill me with it.
Right.
Which
Like,
I didn't
damn.
get. I didn't understand that. I guess he was like, I can't beat you, but I decide if I die.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna let Fontaine
But
get me. I'm
but-
taking myself out of this.
But based on his dialogue, it also felt like he was trying to get you to give up in your programming, because he kept, what was the phrase he kept on saying? A slave is
a man chooses a slave
right,
obeys.
which felt like, hey, fight it to me in the moment, right?
sure,
you kept
but that's the
doing it.
thing is that he can't not be
Mhm.
until he removes
until he takes
Fontaine's
some
control.
good old drugs.
Right, like it's that, like, yeah, philosophically, I guess this makes sense for what you're trying to tell me, but that, and that, I think, to the point of the game where you have the, and we could, that's also, I'm gonna say this about Infinite too.
last
You
thing.
have the philosophical and moral conundrum of the game that is represented in one body, one side, more than anything, and then you have your sort of like science fiction kind of like source of power sort of side that usually is also it's science fiction-y and magical, but it is coming from the side of, but this is either who I am as a person and I can't change that, or I am doing what I need to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Both games having those sides meet at each other in conflict, usually through you as the character. But in that moment with Ryan trying to convince him a man is not a slave. He doesn't have to obey. And he can't change that programming.
Mm-hmm.
If you could, I guess you could just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and do that. Like subscribe to that philosophy. You can't just do that though, if you either do not have the means, the resources, or the ability to overcome literally your physical limitations.
Oh yeah. Let's transition. Bioshock at infinitum. It's Bioshock Infinite.
In the past, in 1912.
Bioshock Infinite, the third of the Bioshock trilogy. We don't talk about the second one. They tried. They failed.
There was a surprisingly big fandom that I found on the
There
internet. for it,
fucking
and I was
always
like,
is. It's like
Yeah,
people on the internet who just want to be contrarians.
It's more Rapture. Like, you get to explore more of the world before Jack shows up. And,
Except it's about communism this time.
yeah, exactly.
And you're a big daddy, and it's all an escort mission.
Big Daddy escort
It's even
mission.
further after all the interesting stuff. And it's like, how are you people still alive? Wait, I
Right.
don't
Yep.
care.
Yep.
But Bioshock Infinite is a different reality, so which
Less water, more steampunk.
yeah, you can really tell they were like, how do we do the same but the exact opposite? So instead of going underwater,
Literally.
we go into the sky,
Yeah.
and we have the floating city of, what's it called again?
Columbia.
Ohio.
Missouri.
Just think Christopher Columbus, and you'll get
Columbia,
Yeah.
Missouri. We just
Mizzou.
like carved it out of the ground and just put some rockets
don't say
on
that.
it.
Don't say that. That's very mean. But
Yeah.
this game aesthetically did read a lot more like the 40s.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, to me, like it wasn't like we were trying to justify it. They definitely threw out, let's try to justify what year it is. It was like, it's the 1940s, right?
Wait, Columbia felt like the 40s to you?
It did when I look at it.
How?
That's so when I look up like 1940s aesthetic, a lot of what you get is like that hyper American
The American way.
World War II propaganda style stuff, right? That's super
Sure,
uber
like, there's-
patriotic, homies
Yeah,
in
there's the
straw
Americana
hats.
element,
Yeah.
absolutely. That has a resurgence in the 40s. But
But there's still a lot of jingoism in the 1900s and 10s.
Of course.
But that's the thing. You look at the hairstyle and the clothing and the architecture, and that is very clearly that like old New England, late Victorian, turn to the 20th century vibes. All the girls, all of the women have the fucking Gibson girl hair that like clearly tells you this is the 1910s.
I think when I saw the swimsuits, that's when the first time I was like, this isn't the year I think it is. But I still
it is.
Yeah, but I still got more of a it felt less like the contrivance, or what am I trying to say, dude? The
Do you think part of it is that like it has an aspect of like pulpy adventure?
No,
Indiana
I think,
Jones style.
I think it's a combination of that's the kind of stuff I've always associated with that time period.
Sure.
Along with more aesthetically, or more obviously rather, it is the story is like white people reaching on to like that quote American ideal, as prescribed by people of that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would make sense for like a 30-year cycle culturally.
Just like we had Andrew Ryan in Rapture, Columbia has Zachary Comstock, a Civil War fighter who was like, fuck your union, I'm outie, and then he lifts off into the sky like Poochie.
Oh.
Yeah, he's gone.
That's a JoJo reference, but later.
But later.
Yeah. I don't know if he's Civil War. I think he's more specifically frontier fighting, like with Wounded Knee, with like a lot of the battles with the Native Americans.
He is post-Civil War in a country that, because of the Civil War, now has a big bleeding grudge against the other half because they didn't want to let go of the fact that they were okay being racist and xenophobic because it made them money, and a lot of fucking money. Yeah,
it's super American.
Yes.
To the point of being creepy, because of course it is. It's not a horror game anymore, but it still has those trape things.
It's horrific.
They're horrific
in a very different way. Like it's not a horror game, but it is a horrific like, here, do you want to distill down American exceptionalism in a game? Let me build an entire city on this idea for you and spit it back out in your face, and you tell me if you don't like walk around day to day and like witness or overhear people sounding almost exactly like this shit.
Yeah. It's essentially like you take Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Ben Franklin and say, hey, those guys were actually prophets, and now I'm the prophet, so you should not just worship them, you should worship me and our ideals of America. Guess what? It turns out to mostly just be white supremacy.
Yeah,
crazy.
With a side of Jesus.
With a side of like heavy duty evangelical nationalism.
Yeah, it's scary because Rapture is like, no gods, say no to all of it. And Frank Fontaine's just like, I made my money smuggling Bibles into here, see? Versus Columbia's just like, isn't it wonderful being in our religious city all the time? And the fact that there's nobody that ain't white, isn't that terrific?
It's funny you say that, because I love that their solution to quote unquote living free and slavery was machines and also slavery.
Right.
Yeah. For the intro of the game, like you only see white people at the festival
by intention
for a while, where it's just like,
this
hello,
place
sir.
is pretty
Isn't
neat.
it?
Wow.
Isn't this a terrific place to be?
No.
Yeah.
You're at a raffle, you pick up a baseball, and they're like, you get to have the first throw, and they bring out an interracial couple, and they're gonna stone them with baseballs. Which is fucked up in a beautiful
way.
way.
Fink instead.
I also attempted.
I threw it at Fink, of course.
Too. And we can get into the sidebar. This doesn't matter. We're not talking about gameplay, but I do think this is one of the first games that was really responsible for, you have choices, but they don't matter, and that pisses me off.
Yeah.
I hate that, but whatever.
Like, we all chose to throw the baseball at Fink, and then a cop no matter what we choose, grabs our
Exactly.
arm.
You choose to give Elizabeth, the true protagonist, which we need to get into,
Yes.
either
We
a
will.
caged necklace or a dead bird necklace. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just aesthetics. It's
Bird.
Yeah.
stupid, and I wish video games would stop doing that. You always give her the bird. You always give her the bird.
You always give her the bird. Who gives,
Who gives
her
her
the
the
cage?
cage?
Come on.
That's stupid.
Right?
We're judging you if you gave Elizabeth the cage pendant.
Yeah,
The
it
hell
turns
is
out
wrong
your
with
choices
you?
didn't matter inside the game. It matters
But it
to
matters
us.
to everyone perceiving you.
But you play as Booker DeWitt, a guy who kind of
What a name.
is associated with all the agreed upon bad guys in American history.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But he is tasked with going to Colombia to get the girl and relieve the debt, or whatever the fucking saying is.
Yeah, you're a drunk and you're a gambler. You've got a lot of debts to pay. Now go kidnap this woman and take her to
Get her.
us.
The woman in question is a 17-year-old girl named Elizabeth Comstock. Oh my God, she has the same last name as the
Whoa.
main bad guy. It's almost like
Whoa.
she's his kid. And she has superpowers. She can tear holes in reality and bring stuff to you. You also still have superpowers, but this time they're called spices, and they vigors, yes, and they don't fuck you up mentally. They're just
No.
They just work.
fuck up your hand a whole bunch.
yeah, but you get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have a little crow hand from time to time.
I was
which is
gonna say,
pretty
I
cool.
want to summon some crows, but can I not have my hand like protruding feathers and blood,
No.
please? Okay.
You must.
You have
This is
to.
the real payment.
But yeah, so Booker and Elizabeth go on a cop shooting, dimension jumping, both sides were wronging adventure. that was mean, and Kaylee's fiance is gonna shoot me for saying that.
Now he's going to press X to shoot you, but then somebody will interrupt his cutscene.
Exactly.
Like, here's the thing about the games to me is that Bioshock 1 is a linear story, but you get looks into the past, but that's not part of the gameplay. Your look into the past is either listening to people's recordings from years prior, or when you get real fucked up on plasmids, you see some ghosts.
Yeah.
Like, it's never something you directly interact with.
No.
Bioshock Infinite instead has a story that moves linearly and to the side.
Yep.
We start to get into the lost problem essentially here, where Elizabeth's power is her ability to interact with alternate dimensions, whether it's to, like you said, take stuff from it or entirely jump into alternate dimensions. And that is a much more difficult story to be able to tell.
Which they do.
I'm not sure.
In their defense, they do a pretty good job of it.
Oh yeah.
They do a
pretty
really good job
It's
of it.
incredibly
It's
difficult.
complicated, wibbly wobbly time travel stuff, but I will
Yeah.
say, out of like the possibilities of time travel, like basically narratives, they do a damn good job while still like making the logic make sense for the most part.
Yeah.
Like there's like I
the
have
most part,
questions
yeah.
here and there, but no, it holds up well and still is engaging. It doesn't feel like, oh, we've been
Yeah.
here before. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's where shit. What is this impact? Where are we going next? I don't know.
To Gibby's point as well, you are a much more active participant in the fall
Yes.
of Columbia, in that
Yes.
you caused the fall of Columbia, as opposed to
Yeah.
coming to Rapture after it has already fallen, which
Yeah.
which I personally think is more exciting.
Oh yeah.
Credit where it's due in that it does jump you into the future to show you, if you do not stop this, the city of Columbia will take out all its rage on the entire world. Like, credit where it's due there. And when they jump to the past in certain timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff, especially consequential to the ending, overall, it does that
The ending.
effectively. But you and I have had our
the
criticism.
the game
that,
is up its own ass with how cool it thinks its story is, right? It's very
Sure.
Inception, where
Yeah.
it's overly complicated for the sake of being overly complicated, and it's
Lost. They do
yeah,
all the
it's
same
Lost
moves
too.
as Lost.
And it's as cool as it is. It's like, okay, you guys thought way too highly and you went too deep, right?
Yeah.
There's too many jumps.
Yeah.
There's too many ifs and scenarios, and where there all are little holes, they're not little, they're giant, right?
Sure.
If we want to talk about the exact ending of the game. So it turns out that Comstock, your main bad guy, is actually Booker from a different dimension, and he goes back to steal his daughter from past alternate dimension him, and she loses her pinky, which gives her the ability to open up rifts. If that gave you a headache listening to, it gave me a headache saying. And it turns out one of the big and the coolest phrase in the entire game is actually constants and variables. Whereas there are things that are constant, there are things that will always happen, and things that can change and modify. Booker will, at the aforementioned raffle, Booker will always pick number 77. You meet the Latouche twins. Latouche, am I pronouncing that right? Latesse. The Latesse twins. The Latesse twins.
Love them.
Who are actually...
She's got to look out for her fellow genders.
Yeah, who are actually the same scientists, just different gendered from different realities. And they fucked with realities too hard. And now they're omniscient. And
they're kind of dead, but kind of not.
Yeah, they're dead, but they're not. They're Lokis and whatever.
Heads or tails.
Every esoteric, flamboyant kid wishes they were them. But
cough, cough, Ian,
cough, Ian. Cough, cough, Kaylie's.
I love you.
Yeah. But they go through and jump around, and you can see clues. They flip a coin. It's always heads. They talk about
which is fucking fun. No, it's always tails.
It's always
which
tails.
Is fucking funny because the chalkboard that Melutess is wearing. Hey, like on
it
the
only
front,
has
it's
4
like,
marks,
it's
and then
halfway
he turns
down,
around,
but he turns around and it's all the way down the back as tails. That's hilarious.
What necklace you pick for Elizabeth changes, like all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's how they sprinkle in the narrative. And there's always a lighthouse. Both all three games, or 1 and 2 both start at a lighthouse. 1 and 2 both start at the lighthouse. Or
no,
1 and 3. 1, 3 start at the lighthouse. There's always a lighthouse.
2 wouldn't because it's already
because
there.
it's already
yes,
down. Yeah,
like your main
right.
Someone outside of here is coming to this place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
there's
a lighthouse.
Constants and variables. There's and the other cool phrase they say in the constants of the game is there's always a lighthouse. Bam! It is heads. Dab. Thanks, Ian.
Oh, no.
We just received a Discord message.
We've received confirmation of the Discord. My apologies.
But
of course he's listening in.
But one of the constants is after the Battle of Wounded Knee, Booker DeWitt has the chance to be baptized. And the variable is he either runs away or he stays baptized. If he runs away, he stays Booker DeWitt and proceeds through the events of the game. If he becomes Comstock, then he becomes the antagonist of the game every time.
He gets baptized and gets extra racist.
In order to stop the cycle, Elizabeth, in her found omniscience, kills him at that moment, right? Because that's the constant. So she removes the constant. Therefore, Comstock can't exist. But that's a logical paradox, because if Comstock doesn't exist and Booker never leaves the Battle of Wounded Knee, she's never born. But because video game shit, that's Elizabeth Prime, so she gets all the memories and powers of the other Elizabeths or whatever. But also all the Comstocks and all the Bookers are still dead, except for the one that goes to Rapture so we can have DLC, and it's fucking stupid.
This is the real argument against more DLC content. It's just so that we can have a nice, tight story. Stop making me buy more things, but more importantly, stop fucking with my pre-established set of rules.
But they also do other stuff, like aforementioned me and Gibby saying they both sides it. There's a warring faction of rebel people, mostly people of color, but also their allies. And
the Irish.
They're black, Kaylie.
Well, no, but it is the Irish and the persons of color that are
The
there
Irish and black
because-
people. It's the 20s,
Yeah.
baby.
Sure. But that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the like teens to the 20s. Irish people aren't the same level as American
No.
white people because you're Irish,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it takes several years of societal acceptance. But it's because they have no choice but to become like government agents. They work for the police. Like that's what you have to do to be accepted, is to just become tools of the law.
Where we were going, you eventually end up in a universe where the rebels are winning, and they try to make out the rebel leaders to be out as bad as Comstock's people, and it's super weird that there's like this. I get it that everybody is capable of evil. That's what you wanted to say,
Yeah.
but this is a weird hill to die on. You know.
Look, it's really weird because in Fallout, fuck. they have the
Another
same
time
damn.
we will talk about your favorite games.
They have the exact same soundtrack.
They do.
But the thing about Bioshock 1 is that they presented a story where they went, both sides are the same, and they were actually kind of right about that.
Sure.
That they were both wealthy industrial capitalists who were exploiting the workers and the children and the most vulnerable people in their society. That doesn't work when you have a game in which the two warring factions are not on the same level as each other. Andrew Ryan and Fontaine are pretty darn similar to each other.
Yeah.
Like, the followers of Columbia, who include their own variety of the clan,
But they're blue and they have crows.
yeah, who have all the power and constantly put up signs like, hey, keep your family white.
Right.
Like, that is not on an equal playing field to the Vox Populi, like the voice of the people, who are mostly made up of disenfranchised classes. Like, it is not a fair fight. So trying to pull out both sides are the same, even if you went to a separate universe where the rebel leaders are extra mean and, I put blood on my face after stabbing the main guy who helps out the racists in Think. Like,
Gives them all their guns.
it doesn't carry the same weight. It doesn't work the same. It can't, because you're just like, yeah, but they're still the people who are the targets of the discrimination. You can't pull this off as well as you thought you could. You can't spend the whole first hour of the game going, this place is quite racist, and then go, but both sides are the same, aren't they? I'm an enlightened centrist named Booker DeWitt. Like,
Oof.
yeah, it just doesn't cut the mustard, you know?
I don't know if I completely agree, because
Sure.
I agree, like, certainly that it's not like but both sides have put, like, I agree with, like, the moral, like, no, racism is bad and the classes should be united under a union and body protecting and serving the people, not their higher in power and status representatives. But I feel like it has so much more. To me, that felt so much less about like the judgment upon them, so much as the recognition of how quickly something started in goodness and a place of fighting for fairness can become darkened. And I think mostly in that idea of coming back to Booker as this vessel of, there are two choices, there are two extreme sides to what you can become, to what this world offers. Like there are two ends of a spectrum in this scenario, in this universe, one of them. That I feel like that like landed for me less with the like moral standing, because like absolutely I agree, it's like, yeah, no, both sides are not equal in this.
Yeah.
But in the way that it's presented and how we're trying to think through, but what is this saying after everything that we've seen? what are we trying to get to at the end of this? And it really is kind of that idea of we have to make a choice because we can't just not exist. Like, we don't get that option.
And to your point, it definitely also leads as foreshadowing as Elizabeth strangles somebody in power, which she eventually strangles and drowns Booker. But I gotta say, I'm on Gibby's side, where I say, yes, that narratively works, but you can't do that to the one named. You can't try to pull that through A, the disenfranchised people, B, the one named black woman, I think, in the entire series.
Other than oh goodness,
there might be somebody in two,
because it's just in Vox tapes, and like it's the, like, we have other characters, but like she's just a name for a Vox tape.
Yeah. It's like that's a tough look, fam.
Yeah,
you know?
No, like it's optics not good, not a great look.
The optics especially get worse when you look back on it and you see the one named black woman in an alternate universe where she's extra violent and she's
in a game where you do nothing but shoot cops. Come on.
Yeah. She's like threatening a small white boy like as a hostage, and Elizabeth, you know, a 17-year-old white girl comes up and like stabs her in the back to prevent it. And then minutes later, Elizabeth like chops off her hair, changes her outfit, and goes, I see the world different now. Like, you can't just kill the one black lady for character development.
Kill a black lady, family. I don't want to know how you see the world anymore.
Girl, you good?
Yeah, exactly. Where it's just like, you know, the craziest thing is that somebody brought this up in a damn YouTube comment. YouTube comments have changed over time, man. Like, YouTube comments used to just be where like shit posting and racism happened. It's now a home in some places for articulate critical discussion. Where somebody brought this up where they were just like, I don't like this because it falls to the trope of a woman must endure cruel acts or commit cruel acts to find development.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, you don't. Like, you can go so much deeper. Like, to have a story that is so in-depth mechanically fall into the traps of, frankly, lazy plot development, I think is disappointing. Overall.
I've never thought about that.
Isn't that crazy?
It is shitty that the entire game is just Elizabeth becoming a worse person, and that being the solution to the problem.
Yeah.
It's complicated, but there are elements like that are disappointing. That's just like, I think you could have done so much more. You were focused on making it all make sense, that it comes at the expense of some of the characters, which is what's incredibly difficult with high-level sci-fi, especially. Like, high-level sci-fi is hard to balance all of those elements.
Sure.
Yeah, and I just think that there's moments like that could be done a lot better. I have a nitpick myself.
Let me hear it.
You have accused this game of being up its own ass for credible reasons. I have silly ones.
Okay. I have goofy reasons.
Mostly because sometimes this game, with the way that it plays with time, when you open a tear or just observe things in the like world that's presented to you, likes to reference things from our world that come up 50 years later, mostly in music. When I was a freshman in college playing this for the first time, I was just going, holy shit, I opened a tear and it played Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm just like, all right, maybe Girls Just Want to Have Fun was a little too on the nose for this
Like, pick
moment.
one. Does she jump through space or does she jump through time? Don't do both.
Both.
I know it's both, and that's why I'm mad.
You have a little girl sitting in the middle of like the ruined slums singing Tainted Love, but as like a blues song. You have the barbershop quartet at the beginning singing the Beach Boys. Like there's it likes to be a little too on the nose at times with how it's working with time. And I didn't even notice this one.
It is, and it sucks.
But it's not subtle.
I don't think it sucks. I think it's delightful.
And you're partially correct. I think that's
also that goddamn barbershop quartet is the best part of this entire game. You leave my boys alone.
Gibby, she's spitting.
That one's correct. Yeah. That one, I'd let them get away with it because sometimes with these references, they're done for aesthetic purposes and sometimes they're for plot purposes. When you do them solely for aesthetic, like the barbershop quartet, I think it's actually really well done. It's like in Moulin Rouge when they have Roxanne as their like slow dancing. That's changed enough that it's aesthetically pleasing. And sometimes they do it to a point where it's almost way too on the nose, like the other examples I mentioned, like the rest of Moulin Rouge.
Rocks.
The thing is that in Bioshock 1, like, they have material from the real world. Yeah. They have songs by like the Ink Spots and people like Ella Fitzgerald, but it's presented as being part of the narrative world. Like it's just a thing that exists. It's not a reference. Modified.
It's not a reference. It's not being like, look at what we did.
It's diegetic. It exists within like the game's world. Like not only diegetic because it's being played like on a radio or on a record player or anything, but also like it doesn't go out of its way to say like this didn't exist before. You know, like this is like you're opening a tear in reality to listen to a Cyndi Lauper song that sounds very specifically picked for the purpose when you're trying to track down Elizabeth again. Like it's just a little too on the nose. I'm not going to say that the first one is not a master of subtlety in any way, but it doesn't like thumb its nose at you or anything, or it doesn't go, hey, remember this? What if we presented it in this way? I will say it was very funny when she opens a Tear to Paris in the 1980s and the truck is coming out. You can see on the movie theater marquee that the Revenge of the Jedi is going to be playing there. I was like, all right, that's okay. That's fine.
Revenge of the Sith?
No.
No. Like, the original title for Return of the Jedi was Revenge of the Jedi, and then George Lucas was like...
Jedi wouldn't get revenge. Yeah, I know that story.
Exactly.
Like, great deep cut there. I was just really, like, taken aback by, like...
Subtler.
Everybody wants to rule the world! A truck! Oh, God!
Shut.
There's just a lot to process in that moment.
Sometimes putting pop music into a video game is just too obvious, and it gains a little bit of an eye roll.
But like I will say, like, for my first time playing through this, I appreciated a lot of it in some ways because right from the top of the game, things are trying to tell you that this is not normal, and not even a like, oh, we have like in this universe we developed this technology to make our steampunk flying city fly. Yeah, like no, literally something is wrong with the way things operate in this universe. And like Ian tried to explain that to me, like with our first encounter with the Lutesses, with the heads or tails. Because
with the statue that changes.
Yeah, the statue that changes. Like, oh yeah, why would a coin only land one way every time? Like, I don't know. And also, like there's maybe the technology is just a pass because we've invented something that works for this, and that's why we have radios and whatever now. But no, it is weird that we have these pieces of music that I know some of these aren't written for another 30 to 50 years from now.
The canon might be Comstock went and used Elizabeth Powers to steal that stuff and then bring it back.
Exactly. Right? It's that we know that over time he's aged himself but the universe doesn't like its peas mixed with its
Kaylie's
porridge.
fiance is still interrupting us with Discord messages.
He's speaking from the beyond in another universe.
Trying to be a Lutece twin.
But no, like that it exactly, we know that he is torn rifts and done all of these things so many times that he has aged himself to look like an old man when he's still in his 30s. And we know that has affected him. So clearly there are things being left behind either purposefully or that have transferred over in however space-time works.
I agree with you, but I feel like the something is wrong here isn't the phrase, because I hate the idea that I'm trying to get lost in the fantasy of this world, but also look at how we're fucking up the fantasy of this world. For me, I didn't do those at the same time. And I don't think anybody playing the game fresh would do those at the same time. And you had the benefit of, no offense to your fiance, you had somebody literally thumbing their nose at you. Exactly, right?
You had a fanboy in backseat gaming a bit, just like, "Ooh, did you notice?"
And again, I know we've spent the last few minutes dunking on Bioshock Infinite. It is a masterpiece of a video game. I think.
It is. I
It's
will
excellent.
say, I think I enjoy the tightness of Bioshock, but I think I enjoy exploring Infinite so much because it's so rich and delightful. And I will say, where it gets more points than Bioshock is that Bioshock's dystopia is delightful.
Yeah.
It's so juicy to piece together what happened here. But what sucks is that we only see the ruin.
Yes,
Here in
Kaylie,
Infinite,
yes, absolutely.
in Infinite, we get to understand what the utopia is or what it could be, and then slowly and tragically, and then some moments we rip the Band-Aid off all at once, but see how it is really truly dystopic and nothing can fix that without destroying the whole system. Like, it is a system that can't be salvaged because it was meant to be this way, and so we have to get rid of the system.
Yeah, but do we really get that much time with it as a utopia beyond like the
If
tutorial?
you get to wander around,
Yeah, if you take your
like,
time.
in the moments they're not hunting you
Yeah.
down, and you wake up on that beach, and you're just like looking at a seaside in the sky. Like, what the hell? That's
because
amazing.
you do see its quote beauty. And honestly, Gibby,
Yeah.
you're also not supposed to want to be part of this definition of utopia because it's super fucked.
Okay.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, like you
Yeah.
clearly understand, like, this is wrong.
But it's pretty.
The world that this is gorgeous. And like, man,
It's
it would be great
Disney-fied.
if this wasn't exactly, like if this wasn't so xenophobic and polished. Like,
Yeah.
this could be amazing for humanity. But that means all, not just what you like eugenics or xenophobe your way down.
The second
to.
you start picking at
Yeah.
it, you start to see where it comes apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most obvious one is walking into the Ku Klux Klan's area, and it's filled
big
with
John Wilkes.
yeah,
Booth
it's
marble
Bill
statue.
John Wilkes Booth. It's filled with trash, and there's flies and everywhere.
He's got bird shit all over his shoulders, which I really appreciated as a detail.
They draw Lincoln as like some demon that's
Yeah.
trying to come and take away all their economic efforts.
Honest to God, I love just stopping and looking at all of the artwork that was generated for this game because there's so much beautiful, like, environmental storytelling again, but also, like, how are all these people indoctrinated into believing these things? Well, look at these paintings. This is what
It's
is
their
depicting
religion.
what they think exactly
Yeah.
as a religion. And it's beautiful and exciting as just like a development idea, but then you go, oh God, like
Yeah.
real world ramifications start setting in.
Gibby, say what you're trying to say, and we'll start to wrap up here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that Infinite in some ways doesn't hit with me as much as the original is because so much more of it feels more obvious and in your face. And I get it. That's the point. It's the early 1900s. It's jingoism. They're not going to try to be subtle about it. They're going to have a
Right.
giant balloon Washington, floating in a parade down the street. But I think I am just more intrigued by the aesthetic of the original and by the characters of the original. And don't get me wrong, like, there's still so much that I very much enjoy about Infinite. I think it's just that from when I first played them, I would say that I appreciated and enjoyed them equally. When I've replayed them, I think there's just more that I enjoy about the original. However, I will say this. When you replay Infinite, there are moments in time in which you slow down and you stop because you know what's going to happen. Like when you first play it, Elizabeth is a cool character overall.
Yeah.
Minus stabbing the only named black lady.
Yeah.
But overall, Elizabeth is like a really intriguing, sidekick and like escort, but not escort missions.
She takes care of herself.
She's really cool.
The info card that's like, Elizabeth can defend herself. I was like,
Yes.
thank God.
Such a relief. But when you go back and replay it, knowing that Booker is Elizabeth's father, what I found this time is I settled into that like ideal so much quicker. And it affected how I played the game, because in the sequence where you see her out of the tower for the first time ever, and she's meeting all these new people on the beach, and she's dancing to the music, and she's happy, I got kind of emotional.
I let her
about it.
dance. I let her dance for a while.
I let her dance.
I let her dance for a long time. Yeah, because I know what's coming, like from the plot, but also it put me in the shoes of like a father watching his daughter grow up and knowing that there's going to be things that harden her heart, and you just want her to stay in this one moment of perfection forever because you don't want to break her heart by introducing her to everything that's ugly about this world and yourself. And that just hit me really hard. I'm not a parent or anything, but that shit got me. Like that's one of the things that I'll say is impressive about Infinite. That like to go from being basically a solo character to being like a solo character alongside somebody that you come to deeply care about is really impressive.
I think for me, and again, I don't want to talk about them as video games because obviously Bioshock Infinite is the better video game. I had two other video games preceding it, right?
There's a difference of 6 years, and that's incredible in video games.
And having the Unreal Engine at their disposal.
Yeah.
They went, hey, you hold this button to look at what we want you to look at, because god damn did we put a lot of effort into the lighting or into the water. Look at it.
In terms of the games as like a story piece and aesthetics piece, as an experience, I do enjoy Infinite in that I'm an active participant as much as Booker can be, because he's still got video game whatever, I have a gun syndrome. But being an active participant is, I think, more impactful. That said, I think pound for pound, just the environmental storytelling, the environment of Bioshock 1 makes it better and a stronger experience, personally.
Narratively, it's much more like Dark Souls, where you're in the fallen kingdom and you're trying to piece together what happened, which might not be as active, but it's something that I find satisfying.
I just think, especially I want to look at, I try to look at stuff in the context of which it came out. I think Bioshock is just so neat. It's marginally a better experience than Bioshock Infinite. But I have less to say in a good way about Bioshock than Bioshock Infinite, you know? Kaylie, do you prefer one over the other? You kind of got into it, but you could say no.
No, I don't think I do. Like, I think it's that I prefer Infinite for just like how, as a game, it gives you so much to pick through, which is really exciting because it's that like I just get to go look at things, I get to find things. I think it handles the, like, again, the idea of a utopia is great, but the best way to make a utopia work is to make it fuzzy, is to make it unclear, that this blurry image of something looks and sounds like a really good idea, and the utopia, as you clarify it, becomes dystopic, as you can start to see the details, as you can look at the cracks. You see why it can't work, and getting that in the Bioshock Infinite way is exciting.
Yeah.
I think personally, I as much as I really enjoy how they handle all the universe hopping, dimension hopping, it's exciting and I like what it does with the story. But it's that I don't know if this is what I wanted for this game, but I also really I like this.
It's cool.
I like this in relation to what the question is that we're asking, in a sort of we can't avoid either of these things. How do you fix this? How do you fix something like this? And the answer is just unplug it, kill it, turn it off.
Which always seems to be the answer. Just shoot it.
It's that. How do you stop these two horrible things from just repeating this infinite cycle?
Shoot them.
You have to nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
You have to cut it off before it can start. Which, for the message it's trying to say in relation to the philosophy, the American exceptionalism, I love it. I just don't know if it's my favorite choice as a game narrative in that way. I like how Bioshock plays structurally in that way. But at that philosophic questioning level, I really love that as the sort of, how do you stop the cycle? You break it.
Yeah.
You just cut it off.
Hell yeah.
You take the great chain and you break it apart.
Oh yeah. This has been a longer one, but both of these
we did a double episode,
both
baby.
Of these video games are worth your time.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe not the remastered version of Bioshock 1.
The audio is fucking garbage.
They'll never fix it.
It keeps crashing.
Thank you so much for joining us on this adventure through dystopia and being really wet and then flinging ourselves into the sky, I guess. Follow us on the socials at LibArtistPod on the Twitter. We promise not to ever do Twitter blue. That's just whack. Join us next time when we turn Kaylie into a Big Daddy. And that's the sound she'll make. Peace.
The Liberal Artists Podcast premieres every other Thursday on your favorite podcasting platform. The show is hosted by Bodio, Kaylie Horowitz, and Andy Gibson. You can find the show at LibArtistsPod on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks to White Hot for performing the theme song Reflect, which can be found on freebeats.io. Now, I'm off to go exploring, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find a sheep that I can call my own. Good day.
Hi, it's Gibby. It's very late at night, and I couldn't decide on which stinger to use, but I figured since we basically recorded 2 episodes, you can have 2 stingers after the credits. So, here you go.
Sidebar: Poochie was a Simpsons reference, not a JoJo's reference.
Oh, Poochie! Like he has to go back to his home planet.
Needs me. Yeah.
JoJo,
literally,
The Simpsons.
Hey, Bart Simpson's middle name is JoJo, so
JoJo.
deal with that. Anyway,
where are we? Okay, real question. If you were a citizen of Colombia,
I'm black.
How soon would it be before you accidentally forgot you were floating in the fucking sky and fell off the goddamn
Immediately.
city?
Dude, the bridges, when they have times and whatnot, I would totally be talking to somebody, bump my thigh into that sky bridge and just fall off. Straight
Please
tumble
mind
off.
the gap. My guy, I need you to put that phrase another 10 yards before the gap
Build
so my dumbass has time to read.
Why are all these things thigh high?
Right.
Motherfucker, at least give me 3 feet.
This is how you know you are in the early 20th century. There is no safety regulation on these ledges.
Just like Andrew Ryan would have wanted.
You're right. There it is.
Regulations. Ah!
Fall off on your own damn accord.